Okay, it's day 111, part 2, Pack ISI 111, Pack ISI 111. So I'm going to coin a new term here, which is called a surveillance rabbit, or follow the white rabbit. You might have seen this follow the white rabbit. I'm going to call it a surveillance rabbit right here. But if you really look at the modus operandi, and the three that I would call your attention to is George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and the third one is Valerie Plaime. And again, always bad imitations of Valerie Plaime. You take somebody who knows how to do spycraft, and then you put it in the hands of, I'm going to say idiots. I don't mean to call Carter Page an idiot. I guess I should say pawns, useful pawns. And Hillary continues to do this over and over again. She doesn't invest in the quality of spies. You need to have a Valerie Plaime type of in-depth professional that really knows the oil and gas business, that is trained in all the different parts about how to move around a room and how to gain influence and so forth. Now, it helps that she's a beautiful woman, I would admit that. But if you skimp on your spies, you get these disasters. So I'm going to start out with Valerie Plaime setting a high bar of how spycraft is really done, and then show the devolvement in this whole fiasco with choosing somebody like a Papadopoulos or somebody like a Carter Page as being what I call surveillance rabbits. What you want, and Valerie Plaime I would call a surveillance fox, and then I would call Carter Page and Papadopoulos surveillance rabbits. Both are intended to get you intelligence. Both are intended to get you into doing economic spying. Both are intended to get you inside the world of oil and gas, and then get information so that your country can benefit. The problem is when you get greedy and you try to make everybody in the world a Valerie Plaime, you end up with a bunch of rabbits that just end up getting found on the highway or whatever, the rabbit of Kyer Fanner or whatever. And what I mean by that is, you see this MO of sending people to these oil and gas seminars. Here's Carter. This is Papadopoulos going to the 2011 UNESCO, and they've started up this thing called the Energy Stream. Okay, first annual conference in London. Okay, and what you do is you send in your NOC, your non-official cover person. This is what Valerie Plaime did so well in the late 90s, and you find out everything there is to know in one night by just talking and making small talk and battering the eyelashes, I guess, in her feminine wiles. She would come back and know the whole strategy of a corporation for 28 different deals in 28 different countries, and somehow she could keep it all in her head. Now, it helps to have a Confederate where you can kind of give a little bit of the intelligence back to a Confederate, and he could go write it down, and then you can kind of keep moving through the crowd. But this is what was so badly botched by Carter Page and so badly botched by Papadopoulos, where they didn't get anything right. You can now also see, if you go down, and Papadopoulos hasn't been at this very long. He's only been at this since 2011, but you can see very clearly he was a part of the Hillary State Department. You can see he was being groomed to be a NOC. There's no question about it. Okay, Eric Braverman would be another person I would say is a great NOC. Neil Brown, a professional NOC. These are surveillance foxes. You can't tell that they are trying to get surveillance, that they're trying to grab intelligence. Okay, but here we go all the way back 25 years now, and we see Carter Page speaking at different events. Okay, for the transition, he worked for Carter Page worked in Navy Intel for the Department of Defense, and you can see he's making comments here in the House Senate Select Services Committee. Now, Carter Page could have been another Steve Bannon. He could have been another Teresa Grafenstein, but somehow he went off the rails just because he says crazy things, or he can't keep focused, or whatever the problem is. But he had a brilliant start. But then somebody at some point marked his career dossier surveillance rabbit, meaning we're just going to use this guy as a pawn and move him around the board wherever we need him to create a surveillance opportunity. And your idea is, now you're just going to go into a conference, an oil and gas conference. You're going to just go up and bump into the person who's the speaker at the end and talk for 10 seconds, and that's enough. We'll generate a FISA on that. And that's why these FISAs that are generated are so pitiful and so wet cardboard, is because these are just bump These are just bump meetings that these people are then writing up as FISAs. You're going to find the last 20 years, I heard Cheryl Atkinson say this on Fox News, you're going to find the last 20 years have been this all bump and run FISA, and they've gotten away with it somehow. Whereas, Cheryl Atkinson, would say, okay, well, there's going to be 200,000, UF6 containers delivered every 3 months at the port in Lagos, and Oteba's trucking company is going to do that, and they're going to come down from Niger. The yellow cake is going to be crushed with the Krupnik crushers over there just north of Lagos. It's going to go on the Maersk ship, probably between these dates, and then it's going to head from there to there. A whole dossier of really solid stuff, so that if you ever had to build a FISA off this stuff, it reads like a movie. You see the whole thing happening right in front of your eyes. So I don't mean to be too tough on Papadopoulos because he's a young guy, but Carter Page blew it. I mean, he blew it, and he's been used ever since then as the undercover employee thing that Lionel did yesterday really outed Carter Page as being a kind of I don't want to say low-level flunky, but something just above a low-level flunky, where he's just been used as a little puppet, a little surveillance rabbit running around New York to these different conferences. They keep him speaking at New York University to try to keep baiting the hook, and every once in a while a Russian will bite and think that there's an oil deal to be had because Carter Page is representing people with money. So now what they're going to try to do at this point, since this is so flimsy, there's so little probable cause, they are going to try to say that he met with Sechin's assistant, which he did. He did in Moscow. He met briefly with Sechin's assistant. Sechin is the head of FSB in Russia. This is going to come out. Jay Tapper's going to hang his hat on this meeting with this assistant for Rosneft, Rosneft. So that's coming. I'm sorry to be a little bit tough on George Papadopoulos and Carter Page today, but you could have been abandoned. You could have been abandoned, and you really didn't. You fell far short. And props to Teresa Grafenstein, not saying she's a knock, but she was able to ingratiate herself into the Congress, and look at how little oversight there was on the Awans. Look at how long the Awans had their spy ring in Congress. 16 years, and nobody really figured it out. Still, people today are still doubting whether Anthony Weiner knew the Awans. They're still doubting whether they were involved with the Operation Cassandra. So it's really quite amazing. I mean, I think she did a great job. No Valerie Plaime. I mean, there is probably only going to ever be one Valerie Plaime unless you go all the way back to Cast No Shadow.